Hello, my name is Sharon Roberson. I'm the president and CEO of the YWCA here in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. I am so excited about today's YWCA Stand Against Racism regarding Black art, because Black art does matter. We have these series of community discussions because we like to take our message to the broader audience, because all aspects of Black life, of African American experience are relevant and is important, not the least of which is Black art. And thank you for joining us. Black art has always been a part of Black history. This is something that we have done. Even enslaved individuals in this country brought their art, because art is liberation. Black art has always been a way of showing expression. And sometimes we have depictions of oppression, but we also have joy in our art. It has provoked emotions and pushed our imaginations. We are so fortunate today to have this illustrious panel. We have individuals that in their own right are accomplished artists. First of all, I'd like to thank the Nissan Foundation for making this webinar possible. This conversation, we hope, will build community, spark dialogue, and build a consciousness of legacies of discrimination and oppression. We also like to thank our peace sponsor, PNC Bank. Thank these significant corporations for their support of our mission of eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We're going to start with Mr. Danny Broadway. Danny, could you give us your name, your medium, and why you believe that Black art matters?
Okay, yeah. My name is Danny Broadway. I am mostly a painter. However, I'm really interested in printmaking, drawing, photography, sculpture, and a lot of other visual art making methods. I live here in Memphis, Tennessee, and I work on canvas, mostly wood, and I spend my time painting mostly. So I believe that Black art matters for several reasons. The first reason is that it's a creative outlet, and it's positive, and it's a way that we can focus on something and stay out of trouble, and also enrich our culture, you know. Um, and then it's also about class, and it's about knowledge and knowing about perseverance and what it takes to document and to just keep things valued.
All right, thank you. Now, Brittany Mitchell, you are a young artist, illustrator. Give us a little bit of, tell us a little bit about yourself, your medium, and why you believe Black art matters.
Sure. I'm Brittany Mitchell, and I hope there's an echo, sorry. And my medium is mostly painting as well, acrylic on canvas, but I also like acrylic on cardboard because there's more texture with cardboard, even though I have to struggle with it absorbing the paint. But I believe that Black art matters because representation matters. So I usually paint my experience, and I don't really see that depicted anywhere else. So I think when you have a point of view and you have an opinion, and it's a wonderful outlet to express that.
All right, Lakeisha Moore, same question, your name, your medium, and why you believe Black art matters.
Yes, I'm Lakeisha Moore. I'm from Nashville. I work with water-based oils mainly. I also use watercolor as well. And I think Black art matters, for some of the similar reasons, but Danny mentioned documentation. I find that making work, as you said, is liberating when you can speak on your collective memory and your personal memory. So that's why that's why Black art matters to me, because with our perspectives, it's evident of our history and also evident of our story, and we can start a dialogue through that exchange.
Thank you. And LeXander Bryant, Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, your medium, and why you believe Black art matters.
Hi, everyone. I'm LeXander Bryant. I'm a Jackson, Alabama native. I've been based in Nashville for about 7 years, primarily doing photography, but I also do graphic design. I do a little bit of film, and I've also been doing wheat paste for the last about 4 years. And so to me, I'm from Lower Alabama. It's a small town. And so growing up, art wasn't even a factor in my life. You didn't see it anywhere unless it was, you consider advertisement and marketing art. But I think the fact that I could, tell my story and, leave these breadcrumbs of information for people behind me to just follow and pick up and, create their own story, I think it matters more than anything. I think representation and documentation go hand in hand, and I'm just here to tell a small part of the story, but I hope that I can inspire someone else to kind of just add to it. And I think we create, the next wave of history and, documentation. And I think that it's just needed with everything else because there's so much information out there.
Okay, LeXander, I'll go back to you because you mentioned that you were not exposed to a lot of Black art growing up, but somehow this became what your passion is, your calling. That there's a lot that had to happen in between. How did you get to this spot? Because you're getting some prominency, you're doing very well. How did you move from the lack of exposure to moving all the way to where you are today?
Right. So when I say art, I mean visual art. And so in my family, there were always people that did music, or my grandmother used to sew and things like that. So I would consider that art. So I've always had a passion or a desire to find out like what's my purpose, and just finding out what am I good at. It's only so long you can do sports, and I wanted something that I could do forever. And so for me, it was, once I stumbled upon just a few skills, just figuring out I knew how to work the camera, I was kind of all in, just taking advantage of that skill set and knowing like I could actually use this in a positive way to tell a story, to create some income, and to just find a positive way to use my time.
Lakeisha, all of you artists are creating history. Now we know the history of Black art. We know that even our enslaved ancestors tried to bring what they had from their homeland to the United States, what later became the United States, and they kept that legacy going. You are creating history today. What brought you here? What made this part of your passion?
I think what made this part of my passion, I think similar to what Elise said about seeing certain members of your family, or seeing artifacts that were passed down. Just when you said that, I was thinking about one of my great aunts and the quilts that she had on her bed when I would go back to Mississippi, and I still remember just kind of looking at those quilts. I don't have them in hand now, but the idea to take what you had and make something beautiful out of it, and just kind of weave the story of your life in that platform. I use anything from canvas to recycled pallets to recycled doors, and all of those elements, all of those surfaces, as Brittany said, kind of speak to something different. The tactile nature, this need to work with my hands. My father's a truck driver, and and just those things don't leave us, and we're part of our family's histories, our parents' histories, and we take those experiences that we don't even know with us. Well, they are with us, I believe, and so I think it does come through in our own artwork. So I think that's where it started for me with family.
Okay, Brittany, I'll go to you. Walk us a little bit about your journey. Why is this a passion of yours? It seems as though people, it says, if you give your life to something you love, you'll never have to find a job because that will be your calling. Tell me a little bit about why this is your passion.
Well, that's a great question. My journey is a little different because I don't do this full time, and I have a full-time job in New York in sales, and but art has always been my passion. And I wanted to major in art in school, and my mom said, no matter what, no matter how great of an artist you are, no matter what you do, you're going to need to understand business, and you're going to need to understand sales. And so I went into marketing because it felt like business art, which is not. But long story short, I kept painting in my free time. And I wanted to sell my art, but I didn't want to give up any of the pieces I had created. So that was difficult. And actually during COVID, my mom and I spent a lot of time together, and I wanted to paint something nice for the living room. I ended up painting these 3 strong Black women, and she was so inspired by those women, she wrote poetry. And then we do affirmations. And then we decided, like, let's write a book and publish it. And so what we ended up doing is I got to sell my art through selling this book, as opposed to like, I spend a month on a piece and now I've got to give it away to somebody. So it's so crazy to now, art's always been my love, but I've never found a way to make it my job or my livelihood. So it's great to come back to that passion.
And Danny, our artist and educator, tell us about our passion, because you not only do it for yourself, you teach others.
Yes, that's correct. Well, I can relate a lot to LeXander's comment. You know, when I was a kid, I was not around artists. You know, nobody in my family was into art. We didn't own any original art. The only thing that we had maybe hanging in our houses was my parents' awards, like what's behind you in your office. You know, they would have their awards behind the television and things like that. And there may have been a picture of white Jesus somewhere in my grandmother's house or something like that, but it wasn't, we just didn't talk art. We didn't talk about art. It wasn't a conversation. But I was always drawing things. I was just in fact, I'm drawing things right now. I'm just always making things, you know. So, and I was very quiet as a young child, and my parents didn't really know what to do with me, so they would put me in a lot of art camps and stuff in the summertime, and I really just started to develop a passion for art. And then through like middle school, high school, those were the things that I was good at. You know, I wasn't the best student in math or the best student in English or anything like that, but I always enjoyed my art classes. So that just kind of led me to developing a strong passion and a strong need to explore and learn more about art. And then I just started feeling like I was always interested in the past. You know, I always liked the photographs in my grandmother's photo albums, and I would always take those pictures and draw them and talk about them. And I would love listening to people talk about the stories of people that lived before me that were related to me and stuff like that. And then that just became something that I figured out how to create and sell. And then once I was able to create it and sell it, I was able to explore it even more and talk about the things that I felt like were important. So I may be talking longer than I should, but I'm trying to just get my point out right there.
No, not at all, not at all. This is what this is about. I mean, we talk about art representing freedom and freedom of expression. So what you are doing is really expressing yourself. And that is very important for people to understand all the various variations of your experience, because this is making people understand that maybe the experience that people know of as art in the traditional sense that you studied when you were in school, very limited. You know, you studied these great European artists, but often we overlook the artists that are in our backyards and the art history of Black art. That's why it's very important for people to have this appreciation. The reason we're doing this is because for so many people, this is something that they've never thought about, never realized existed, and never realized that because of the way we have traditionally been taught in our society, people didn't have a clue that there were all these well-known Black artists that have existed for years. We just didn't teach that unless you happen to run up on a Black art history class at some stage in your life. You really did not have this experience. So it's very important. So thank you, Danny. I'll go back to you, Danny. When I look at even historically, looking at the Black artists in history, they'll typically depict people of color or Black people or experiences of people of color. Why do you think that is the case?
You mean for Black artists?
Yes.
Well, I think the first reason is that is their experience, you know? For me personally, I mean, I'm painting people, but I don't always think about the color of the people that I'm painting. But as a Black person, you know, I'm speaking to things that relate to the Black experience. So I feel like if you're an artist, you're a storyteller in a certain regard. So in a way, it's your responsibility to put those stories in visual terms and to put your own unique twist to it, you know, because your unique twist is what makes your work original. And without telling a story that some people can relate to, it's really no point in even talking about anything, you know. So people are prone to talk about what they know. And I feel like that is just part of people's takes, because, you know, every Black artist is different. You know, we all have something to say, and it's not necessarily the same story. It's not even necessarily the same culture. It's just a lot of different ways that creative people are telling their Black stories. And Black means a lot of different things.
Very true. Now, going to you, Brittany, one of the things that Danny said is art as storytelling. And you feature in your works a lot of depictions of Black females. Tell us a little bit about how you came to that and why you ended up that this is what you want to illustrate.
Sure. So probably about 6 years ago or so, I was in a pretty dark place personally. And I had completely stopped painting and I wasn't happy with where I was living, what I was doing. And I was like, well, what do I love? I love female singers. There's certain people who are famous, you know, like Alicia Keys or Adele or Misty Copeland, who inspire me. And so I said, okay, I got to get back into this. Is there something simple I can do? Maybe if I'm drawing a picture of someone who inspires me, then I'll feel inspired. And so I started doing this series of women. It was like, okay, like I Love Lucy was my favorite show growing up. So I did Lucille Ball, and then I did, you know, Misty Copeland, and I'd pick a quote. And so Misty Copeland, who's, you know, famous Black ballerina, start unknown, finish unforgettable. And the Lucille Ball quote was, "I'm not funny, what I am is brave." And so it helped me feel empowered by reading these women's stories, learning more about them, and then going through the creative process. So I used it for me. And then people were like, oh, I really like that. So I was like, okay, great. It's not just me.
Okay, all right, fabulous. All right, Lakeisha, let's going back to you. In your work featuring either Black people or Black experiences or Black themes, tell us why that is so important to have that as part of your art.
Well, it's important for me. So I didn't mention that I'm also an educator, and I worked for 6 years at Tennessee State University. And so I would meet all these beautiful young scholars, you know, with different experiences from different cities, different states and cultures, and they would show me so much. And so in response to the experiences that I had with teaching and learning from them, I wanted to affirm them in their journeys. And so the portraits that I began making, I call them portraits of affirmation in a broad sense, you know, just because I wanted to affirm their individual journeys and stories. And one time I was at an exhibit, and a journalist came, and he asked me, or he he remarked, you know, that I noticed most of your figures are Black, you know, why is that? And I just thought that was the oddest question, right? You know, we talk about what we live and how we live and who we're with, you know, that's why I paint, you know, as we said, it does matter to represent us as a people, but then our daily realities. So that's why it's important for me, especially with students. Now I'm at Fisk University, and so just being within the HBCU space is such a rich history, and I can look at this work every day. And so that's another way to continue that tradition of seeing and honoring past, present, and where we want to be as well.
Okay, LeXander, in your photography and visual arts, I noticed that in the slideshow, especially, we had a slideshow we started as part of this. Many of your subjects, in fact, almost exclusively your subjects are people of color. Can you explain why that is why that fascinates you, or why you feel as though that illustrates some experiences that you've had?
A lot of it is self-reflection, just seeing myself and like young Black kids. And I grew up in a like big Black family. My mother is one of 10. And so it's like, I got a lot of cousins. I got like a lot of aunties and uncles. And so like growing up, just that was my reality, like just Black people. And then me being from the South, like a small town, my high school wasn't as diverse as, you know, the high schools are in Nashville and other cities. So, you know, at my school, it was 50-50. It was white and Black. And so that's just my reality. And so I'm super intentional about making sure I represent, you know, those everyday figures, those everyday people throughout my work, because that's who, like, you know, I don't have that art history background. So in my work, those are the experiences that I'm pulling from, you know, and I'm pulling from just like, I didn't admire celebrities and things like that growing up. Like I admired my dad because he could, in my eyes, he could do anything. He could fix cars, he could paint, he could pour concrete, he could, you know, he could just do so much. He was like that jack of all trades type of guy. Like, you know, so I try to take that same approach in my work, the attention to detail, to just trying to just master everything, you know, and trying to take advantage of like the small things, never taking anything for granted, and just making sure I'm you know, kind of representing that throughout the work, and just hoping to inspire. You know, I think that's really what it boils down to, just hoping to inspire, knowing that a lot of us, we don't have that many options. I think my artistic journey was kind of bred out of, you know, survival and not having options, and, you know, not finishing college. And so you got to figure out, like, I got to do something. I still want to live. I still want to, you know, have a good life. So like, what else do I have? And I think I can just be that like beacon of light. Like, you don't have to have like the art history background, or you don't have to have all of the resources, but you can still kind of tell a story that everyone can relate to.
Okay, LeXander, let me ask you this. The question really was supposed to be, what Black artist inspired you? But you talked about your father, who I've always, you know, I have a father somewhat like yours. It wasn't his profession, it was the sidelines, that he could do most anything. If you had something that needed to be fixed, because there's so many things I see, I said, I wish my daddy was here, he could fix, he could fix this. So I can appreciate those people as having so much creativity and art skills, because they could do things and they did things with their hands. But are there artists that inspired you, or who else inspired you, whether it was a teacher, whether it was a friend, who inspired you to do your art?
Early on, I would just say it's all been family and through music. I've always been a huge music fan, from, you know, gospel, when my mother used to sing in the choir in church, and you know, just my church experience in general. I feel like that was a full art performance. That's a performance in the Black community. Like, that's culture, that's music, that's performance. It's theatrical at times. And so I think, you know, just me being the person that I am, my personality, like, I'm always reflecting, I'm always just thinking back, trying to pull ideas and information from the past. So I'm able to really just, you know, use, you know, just people from the past as like inspiration. Like my grandmother, she loved flowers. And so, you know, I love flowers. There's flowers all throughout my house. And I try to put that in my work, and it's just thinking about, you know, their personalities, like what would they do? Like thinking about how my aunt's dressed, like what would she wear in this photo shoot? You know, thinking about, you know, how my uncles just talk, like how would the slang be in this video? Like when I think about things. And then, you know, later on when I got to college and I'm really actually like in the art and I'm having to figure out like what is my process, where am I kind of drawing from, and what are some influences? Of course, Gordon Parks, Carrie Mae Weems, Hank Willis Thomas, you know, Samuel L. Jackson, you know, just people who had personality and were fearful when it came to like just being on that stage, and like they represented for like pure Blackness. And I've just always been a fan of just Southern people and just the Black identity.
That's fabulous, because there is that rich heritage that a lot of people really don't understand and appreciate. And Lakeisha, something that you said previously about the quilting. See, I grew up in a family of quilters. I'm not one, but I had one of my father's sisters. I've got those big Southern families that add quilting, and they started off little, and then by the end of the day, they had this big quilting machine and filling a whole room. But we would always go to these little places and get little scraps of materials. I wonder, you can't make a dress out of that. Little did I know she was getting those little scraps that some of them that fabric shops just threw away for her quilting. So Lakeisha, going back to you, let's talk about Black artists or people in your life that inspired you to be an artist.
I think I'm gonna also use, because I had this in my notes, but Carrie Mae Weems is someone also that I've looked to for a number of years, because of not only her presence when she's in her photography or videos, but the fact that she is a storyteller. And I'm not the greatest storyteller, so I think putting it on paper or putting it on canvas works for me. Carrie James Marshall is another one, another artist. Now, well, again, being around so much of Aaron Douglas' work, you know, and seeing that portraiture is still relevant, you know, because sometimes, you know, you may find that you question your perspective, question why you make, or why I make simple portraiture, but then after I look at it, I look at our history, our rich history of portraiture, and why we made this work. There's relevance and there's space for all of it, and so that's the artists that are working, you know, even now, you know, going to the Frisk and seeing Lee's work and looking at the portrait, I think finding inspiration and all of that for me is I think it keeps that energy alive to make, to question, because you're not always making in the studio, right? But you're having conversations, and I think the conversations are important in those lived experiences with other artists or with family too. But I don't think I had a direct inspiration, so I think that's why for me to be a mentor to other young people, young women, you know, in the school setting is important and meaningful.
All right, Brittany, tell us a little bit about your inspirations for your work.
Sure. So there are a couple artists who inspire me, but my work doesn't look anything like their work. But it helps me. Like, I do a lot of research before I start a project. So one artist, David Driscoll, I love his mixed media. And that's not something that's natural for me, and I'd like to get more into it. So that's one artist I look towards. But also there's this artist, Glory Sam Jolly. She is Afro-Caribbean and British, and she lives in London. And she does this work, like if you know, when you go to a traditional museum and you see the royal family and just that old, rich, traditional, when you think of an art museum. But what she does is she puts Black people in those clothes, in those roles, in those rooms. And I love art that makes you reconsider the role of a Black person, or where you see Black people, or makes you rethink. And so I'm working on a project now, because my world is very corporate, and I want to do all Black women in the C-suite. And I'm working and conceptualizing like that shouldn't be weird to see, but I've never seen it. And so I'm working on art that where can we put Black people where we don't see them? So then it becomes normal to see them there.
Okay. And Danny, tell us a little bit about your inspiration. Someone, either an artist or otherwise, that really has inspired you to do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can say from when I was a young child, it was probably my grandfather, actually both of my grandfathers, because they were not artists, but they were very handy. My great grandfather used to carve these little animals out of pieces of wood, and he would make canes and stuff like that. And I remember that from a very young age. And then going into middle school, high school, it was teachers. In college, it was teachers. And then when I was out of college, it was artists. It was like professional artists. So one artist that comes to mind, his name is Frank Frazier. And if you've ever heard of Frank Frazier, you would appreciate his work. But he goes back and forth from here to Africa, and he collects fabric. And he took me on a trip with him to Africa, to the fabric district, and I got to experience being in West Africa, experience his work. And then also he showed me how to travel and how to set up shows and how to be an entrepreneur. But if you had asked me who my influences were coming out of college, I would have told you artists like Picasso, Edward Hopper, probably Andrew Wyeth, artists like that. But back to Lakeisha's point, she mentioned Aaron Douglas. And I did not know anything about Aaron Douglas until maybe about 2 years ago. And the only reason that I know that is because I'm now in grad school and I'm learning about African American art in a way that I had no way to ever appreciate, So those murals there at Fisk, the Aaron Douglas murals are so inspirational to me that he's one artist that is really speaking to me at the moment. The way that he incorporates African themes into his work to kind of enrich people's ideals about African culture, and those things are really inspiring me currently. But that's a very, very broad ranging question because I'm inspired by all of you guys.
Well, that's very good. Okay, Danny, you mentioned that you have had, I guess, some mentors in the art world that have helped you really to learn how to stage art and really to be a entrepreneur, I guess I'll call it, because that's, you've combined the two. What advice for Black visual artists who want to expand, who want to do some of the things that you're able to do? And also, when you respond to this question, tell us a little bit about Broadway Studios.
Okay. Well, the first thing is that you got to get in that studio and you got to get to making some stuff, because you can't just expect to step out the door and just have everybody fall over what you're doing, especially if you're talking about fine art, because fine art is fine art because it's fine art and you have to work on that art. Second thing is that I think you should really try to connect to professionals that have broad ranging networks. And I think you should try to develop some personal relationships with those people. Because if you are trying to reach people with your work, you can't always wait on the museums to call you to say, we want to have this exhibition for you, because who can wait? If you're doing this as a career, then you're actively pursuing some things on your own, and you're using your ability to position yourself to try to be in places that would be respectable to someone who respects a museum. So, and then it's all about presentation. Like, you have to think about your presentation. But I think the main thing is just networking, networking and showing up and making yourself professional. Just like if you are getting up and going to a Wall Street job that's paying you millions of dollars a year, you have to get up and think about yourself as your art is Wall Street. So you have to figure out how to do that Wall Street thing with your art.
Okay, I like that. Okay, Brittany, you mentioned earlier you published a book with your art now. You also recently launched a website so the world can more broadly see your art. What advice will you give to Black visual artists who want to expand their reach?
I would advise Black visual artists to use a site called Redbubble. There are probably many sites like this, but it allows you to upload your art and put it onto merchandise like clothes, clocks, pillows, pencils, stickers. You can also sell prints, but what I noticed is that people liked my art. First of all, I'm not, like I said, I don't want to sell the actual pieces. I got to work up to that. But I wore a dress that had my art on it to a restaurant, and the girl who worked there said, "Wait, where'd you get that?" I said, "I made it." She was like, "Can I get one?" I said, "Sure." She's like, "Actually, I want it as a shirt." And at the restaurant, I logged in and like put it on a shirt, and she bought it. And so I think people want unique pieces and they want art and they want it in their lives. And not everyone's going to hang a piece of art or pay a lot to hang an original. But like Redbubble gives artists a way to get paid and not deal with manufacturing. And it gives people a way to support and not, necessarily pay a huge price tag.
Okay, Lakeisha, same question. What advice would you give? Now you're have a wonderful Fifth Gallery coordinator doing that work, helping give people opportunities. What advice would you give to a Black visual audience that wants to, let's say, one day have their piece at the gallery at Fisk University?
Well, I can add a little bit to what's been said, but I agree with continuing to work, to network, as well as when you have opportunities to collaborate. I think that's another aspect. I had an opportunity to show recently because 4 years ago I gave a talk for a classroom, and just taking advantage of various opportunities like that where you may not know what it will lead to, but it could lead to larger and broader and far-reaching opportunities. And also one thing I think I would say is to have a clear idea of your vision and let it expand, but have that idea so that when you are approached to do certain projects, you won't feel so obligated to, oh, I have to do this or I won't make it here. No, I mean, if it doesn't align, don't force it, right? And so I think that's another thing that I'm learning still, in the art space, whether it's gallery showing or community work, if it doesn't fit your vision for what you want to share and give to the world, it may be better for someone else. And I think that's a great lesson to learn. It's also a great way to stay authentic to your purpose.
Okay. LeXander, now you have reached and you have a wonderful exhibit at the Frisk Museum here in Nashville. I want everyone to go there and make sure you visit this and see this, because we need to support these artists that are out there, because they put it out there. If we go support it, the next person in line will be there too, and even have an expanded exhibit. But give us advice to other Black visual artists who want to expand their reach, because this is fantastic and I'm so proud, and it really makes a difference for us all as a whole. So give us some ideas.
I think being a photographer, I'm in a different position because I'm more so like a work for hire. And so I'm able to network and collaborate at a rate probably more than a lot of other artists. I'm always on gigs. It's hard to say no. I'm almost like a workaholic. I love just being able to network and meet people, and I don't know. I feel like that's kind of how I've been able to grow my community. And also availability is the best ability. If you're available for the job, you're able to meet people. That helps as well. I study my work, and I'm always trying to improve my work. And I'm also trying to understand what about the work is it that I like, what makes this work so good, or is it good? And so when it comes time to talk about it and explain it, I'm able to do that. I'm not scared to talk about my work. I'm not scared to critique it. I'm not scared to, whatever the case may be, I understand the work to where I can talk about it, and you know, I'm comfortable with creating dialogue around it. So I think that helps a lot to where you're able to pitch yourself, you're able to like position yourself in some unique situations where, you know, you might not find yourself if you're just sitting back and you're like Danny said, you can't always wait on people to come to you. Like you kind of got to go out and get it sometimes. So the more you know about yourself, the easier that process is.
Okay, thank you. And I would say this is an opportunity because I want when people leave this call, because let me tell you one of the questions that was in the chat that I found, because I want to make sure we get to at least some of these because we have some others that I want to finish up with. But one question I'll go out of sequence in the chat was that when you are staging a house, you're getting ready to sell a house, a lot of times a realtor will tell you to take all what they call the ethnic art out of your house. And it is believed that Black art is only for Black people. I guess the idea is if you have this ethnic art in your household, that it must be a Black owner. But I truly believe that Black art should be there for everyone. Everyone should have an appreciation because it's beautiful. And Danny's sitting on this call with art hanging in the Memphis airport, and he's never even told us that. but so I think there's a level of self-promotion because we are taught by nature, me included, that I guess I don't want to say self-promotion, but you know, let your art speak for itself. But I want you all to make sure that this audience on this day really understands your art is for everyone. And everyone needs to know that. So I'm throwing that out there because as we go to these next questions, I want everyone to really and all this information is in the chat. So people make sure you support these artists. But I want you all to really tell each of us, and I'll start back with you, Danny, the role of art in social movements and bring awareness. The reason I bring up the issue of art in homes, being Black homes, is because we need for everyone to have a broader appreciation. That's why it's so important that LeXander is in the Frisk, because most people that probably go to the Frisk are not people of color, but they need to have an appreciation for your art. For people that go to the airport to have an appreciation for all that we do. We need for people to drive on the other side of these railroad tracks and go over to Fisk University and see this beautiful gallery and see what we have there. We need everyone to go in there and buy, you know, Brittany Mitchell's book to see, oh, this is what a young Black artist looks like. So I want people to give us from you why you think the role of art can move us together and be part of that bridge that we're trying to have in our community where we have a racially divided community. How can art bring our community together?
Okay, well, I think that art is a movement. I think art is a social movement. I think when you think about all of the visuals that you've seen over the last few years that deal with Black Lives Matter or police violence or anything of that nature, you can think about the imagery that goes along with it. Like, for instance, the Black Lives Matter. When you think about that, you think about the Black background with the white letters, and that is an artistic choice, you know. So without the visuals of that T-shirt or that banner, the movement kind of doesn't even exist. It's just in the space. It's just out there. And until you put it in a visual form, then you can't even define it visually, you know? So in my opinion, I think that it is one of the most important things to look at with social movements, because it is the thing that documents that movement.
All right, and Brittany, going to this intersectionality of race and gender, because sometimes the most beautiful art that I have seen really depicts Black women. But talk about the role of social movement, eliminating racism and empowering women. That's part of the YW mission. Tell me a little bit about how art helps move that mission forward.
Well, I just feel that, like we talked about earlier, so much of our history, we didn't have control over who was depicting, especially how Black women were portrayed. And when someone's portraying you and they own you, or they don't think you are, you're a secondary citizen, if you're even a citizen, that's not going to be a great depiction. And so I think when we start to take ownership of how we look and how we were represented, and then people see us represented how we see ourselves and go, oh, never seen a woman like that. I didn't know that was the Black experience. And so I think the more we can show how we live and our culture, and like how LeXander talked about how we grew up and what's normal to us, I think people are open to that. They're open to seeing Black Panther. They're open to movies. They're open to music. They're open to our culture. And I like to say, you can't argue with the painting. It exists. And so maybe we can open some minds through art that perhaps aren't open through conversation. So that's what I would say.
Okay, Lakeisha, let's say I'm on this call and I'm interested in coming to Fisk University, look at the beautiful gallery. What will that teach me? How will that help me in moving forward and opening my mind to the issue of liberation from racism?
Well, I mean, the Fisk, the collection that we have at Fisk, right, was given by George O'Keeffe in 1949, and working with President Johnson, and then also Carl Van Vechten, all these parties coming together, believing that to show a different perspective and to represent what had not been represented before in the area of fine art was important, right? To share these stories. So whenever I have the opportunity to share that with visitors, that's a highlight of mine, just because I know sometimes operating in our silos, we're not sure how we can share that story. But I think in the simplest form, making work, as Danny said, art is a movement. Art communicates. Art is a conversation, and I think it not only galvanizes, but it bridges gaps. We've been talking about that, and having these spaces that highlight where these gaps were bridged is really important. Places like Fisk, places, like Tennessee State, showing the work that's produced from members of the Black community and also abroad, people of color, and the exchange that takes place. I think the exchange is really important, or we're not learning from each other in that sense. Yes, we have our stories, but it's also important to learn and ask questions. Earlier, I just kind of want to piggyback off of what LeXander said. The make work, collaborate. Another thing I forgot to mention was to ask questions. And that's something I think, is important to always do too, when you come into these spaces. Why is this here? How did that come to be? That just kind of opens up a whole gamut of information and knowledge that, that's good to know, right? So.
Very much so. And LeXander, oftentimes I think when you, let's say, look at just the news, I call it the Black mug shot news. You see photo after photo after photo of the Black mug shots. And then you see the beautiful depiction of Black people in photography and visual arts. What role is art in that social movement in letting those see the beautiful tapestry of Black experience through art, as opposed to what you might see on the news media?
I think you just said it's almost like we're trying to counter that opposing movement, to where all they want to show is one image, but we're trying to like flood the internet with just beautiful images of Black people, and everybody on this panel does the same thing. Like, we're all, whether we do it directly or indirectly, it's like we're fighting the same kind of cause. It's like I just want to put out imagery that kind of is a pure depiction of like the life we live. It's never super glamorous or over Photoshop, but it's always, in my opinion, pure and like just, I think it's all I always try to make something relatable. That's like where I start. That's like the foundation of my work, is relatability. Is like You know, how would someone else feel about it? Is there anything that another person could pull from? And it's not just for Black people. I think it's for everybody. Like everybody's gonna have a different take on it. Like it's up for interpretation. And I've always said that, you know, photography is, I love it, but I never thought of it as like it's the only thing I'm here for. You know, it's more so like I look at it as a tool to just get people in a room, and from there you could talk about whatever. You could just start to build a rapport, and you don't even have to talk about politics, or you could just be eating. You know, you could just be talking about family, parenthood, you know, childhood experiences, and over time, like I think that starts the foundation of like community and trust. I think that's another big thing is trust and like familiarity, where it's like, okay, like I didn't know that about you, like, but now I see it. Like Lakeisha said, sometimes it's just about asking questions. And I think a lot of the times we approach these situations thinking it's just got to be like, it's almost like we come into it with like just hostility. It's like we come into it looking for a solution, so everybody is already like chosen a side. But I think, you know, sometimes we just got to come together and just kick it, just chill and get to know each other before we start to try to like, you know, figure out what's best for me or what's best for you. Like, let me get to know you a little bit first. And so that's why I think art is important to like, or a part of the movement. And like, that's kind of like the position I feel like my work plays, is like, it just gets people in the room and you could talk about whatever at that point.
Okay, we had a question from the audience, and I'll start with you, Lakeisha. Is the Fisk Gallery open? Has it been open since COVID?
It has been open for a while now. I started in January, and the last six, I know 6 to 10 months it has been open. I know 6 months it has been, and we'll be having a new exhibit come April. So for the next 2 weeks, come on by, you can see the permanent collection, and it's over Origins of Influence 3. So feel free to come in, and we can give you a private tour. You can just simply experience the space.
Okay, let's do a little bit real quick on COVID. Danny, how did COVID affect the art world?
Well, I don't know about the broader range of the art world, but I can tell you what it did to me. It was good for me because you know, I am always looking for a reason to be stationary in my studio. And, you know, I teach, and teaching pulls me away from my studio, but I was able to teach from home. And it was just, I was very productive. And I was sad when it was over. I wish that we could go back to certain aspects of it. And then people were doing so much to their spaces that I was getting a lot of business because people wanted to decorate their homes, and they were really considering their environments, you know. So it was people talking to me more than they're talking to me now.
All right, well, that's a good perspective. Brittany?
Yeah. It's interesting because I spend so much of my life commuting and going to work and traveling for work and doing things that to be at home full time, I had a lot more time to think about art and work on it. And because of COVID, my mom and I spent a lot more time together. And, you know, she's seen my paintings my whole life, but she'd never seen me paint, or we've never talked about it. And so then for her to be inspired to write poetry, I mean, it's like, we live in a much more creative world now because we spend time together and we talk more. And so my art grew during COVID.
Okay. LeXander, COVID in your life?
I think it was weird in the beginning, you know, just trying to figure it out, and everyone is kind of speculating, oh, it's only gonna last a month, or it's only gonna, you know, 2 weeks and we back good. And so over time, I found comfort in it. You know, I'm sort of an extroverted person. I like being out. I love just being around friends and communicating. But I'm also cool with being at the house and just talking on the phone. So I didn't necessarily have to be out and about. I kind of took advantage and I was happy to spend time at home with family, just, you know, picking up new hobbies, bike riding, things like that, where you're just kind of outside, away from screens all day. And you know, I felt like it was a breath of fresh air. I almost feel like it was needed, you know. And so overall it was positive. You know, it was no, you know, situations in the family with sickness and things like that. So I'm honestly just blessed and grateful that I was able to kind of make it through with more of a positive experience. But I know that's not the case for everybody. So I don't want to like make it seem like it was just all good, because I was feeling that too. But looking back, I definitely think for me it was needed to just be able to like sit down and be forced not to do anything, and you can't go anywhere. You gotta find like something else to do. And it was almost like a cultural reset.
Okay. And Lakeisha, we heard what happened at Fisk, but what about you as an artist? COVID.
It was pretty tough for me in the beginning because I was so used to, number one, being with students, and so that was shut off so quickly, and we were all confused a little bit, and but during those first few months, I did kind of start a short program with some of our recent graduates, and it was called Moments in the Sun. And so that was, we would meet via Zoom, and we just kind of share, you know, what was happening when some would go to protest. They would kind of talk about the mood and the feeling, and you know, and so we were able to kind of unload, but also inspire each other. Sometimes we get together and we work, and we work together, right? So maybe one or two of us would be on the Zoom call, and we paint or we draw, you know. So we kind of began that creative outlet, and that was freeing in a lot of ways, because I think we're all feeling the same, you know. So then to be able to know that it's okay to kind of sit in confusion, but then come out of it and learn so much about yourself and about everyone else, you know, around you as well. So yeah, that's how it was for me.
All right.
It
Well,
got better though.
I know it always does.
Yeah.
Thank you for these fabulous artists. Thank you for this session. This is our Black History Month. Stand Against Racism Lunch and Learn. It has been absolutely wonderful. I am a true art lover and collect the art that I can. I hope that everyone supports these artists, because it does make a difference to support art. Art has sustained the Black community in some of the darkest times that we have had. And so we hope that it will sustain us in the future. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to Nissan Foundation as well as PNC Bank for helping us and supporting us with this mission. And so we will see you next month. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Good.
Bye-bye.